Coming up today, heavy rain is lashing central Korea as a monsoon front straddles the peninsula. Up to 300 millimeters could be dumped on the central region over the next 24 hours. In a bid to improve communication, officials from the government, presidential office and parliament are set to meet this week. President Park Geun-hye will also host ruling party lawmakers for lunch on Friday. Plus, Saudi Arabia is rocked by 3 suicide bombings in a single day. An attacker even targets one of Islam's holiest sites in Medina. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Tuesday, the 5th of July. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Only one thing we could start on today, and that's the weather, as it has been pouring down with monsoon rain all day here in Korea. The country's central region, including Seoul, has been hit particularly hard by the downpours. For more on the outlook and all the warnings and advisories that are in effect, we have our Kim Hae-sung on the line. Hae-sung.
Hi, Mark. It's been raining on and off here in Seoul, but the monsoon showers are expected to get stronger across the central region as we head further into the day. At 9 a.m. this morning, 3 hours ago, heavy rain warnings were issued in Seoul, Incheon, and southern Gangwon-do province. As we speak, those warnings remain in effect. The Korea Meteorological Administration says parts of the central region could see up to 300 millimeters of rain over the next couple of days. Ujeongbu, just north of Seoul, had already been pounded by 200 millimeters of rain as of 11 a.m. Dobong-gu district in Seoul has seen 140 millimeters so far. However, as the monsoon front creeps northward, heavy rain advisories have been lifted in Daejeon and Jeollado province. Due to the heavy rain around the capital area, several flights have been grounded. Officials say 14 domestic flights departing Seoul's Gimpo International Airport were canceled this morning.
Well, Hae-sung, I'm sure the passengers will understand the reasoning behind that decision. It is, after all, better to be safe than sorry. How has this rain and wind been affecting the country in other ways, though? Any road closures or accidents reported thus far?
Well, yes, both of those, unfortunately. This marks the heaviest rainfall so far this summer, and here in Seoul, as the water rises, the Dongpo Expressway and Chamsu Bridge over the Hangang River have been closed, leading to congestion. The Cheonggyecheon stream is now completely closed, and 4 national parks, including Seoraksan Mountain and Bukhansan National Park, are also cordoned off. In Gangwon-do province, a car crashed through a barrier and ended up falling in a swollen river at around 3 a.m. this morning, and the 4 people in that car are still missing despite a widespread search. The Seoul city government is currently manning rainwater pumping stations, and disaster response personnel are monitoring rivers and low-lying areas where flooding is possible. Back to you, Mark.
Thank you, Hae-sung, for that report. Now, with the weather being as it is, South Korea is keeping a close watch on dams near the inter-Korean border and stands ready to respond if North Korea suddenly and without warning releases large amounts of water from one of its dams. There are growing concerns North Korea could discharge water from its Hwangang Dam, where waters are currently twice the usual level. If the North does that, it could affect some rivers in South Korea's northern region. The water level at the Imjingang River Dam is currently at level 1 of 4. Now, 1 is actually the lowest, but it's still twice as high as usual. South Korea's land ministry has formulated an emergency plan under which the military is tightening its guard at the border and stands ready to assist if necessary. Seoul's unification ministry will seek communication with North Korea, while other relevant institutions will also monitor water levels. Now, in other news, representatives from the government, presidential office and parliament will hold talks on Thursday for the first time since the 20th National Assembly kicked off at the end of May. Meeting at the Prime Minister's office, they'll discuss pending bills on economic revitalisation, as well as the government's fiscal stimulus plan announced just last week. That includes a supplementary budget of $8.5 billion. On Friday, all ruling Saenuri Party lawmakers are invited to the presidential office for lunch, where President Park Geun-hye will call for cooperation carrying out policy initiatives for the remaining 18 months or so of her term. In a bid to expand communication with the National Assembly, President Park has vowed to sit down with party leaders on a more regular basis. The President of Switzerland will visit Seoul next Wednesday for summit talks with President Park Geun-hye. Officials say Johann Schneider-Ammann and President Park will seek to further upgrade the two sides' partnership in the creative economy by expanding practical cooperation in trade, science and ICT. They will also cover global issues, including North Korea and European issues. Schneider-Ammann will become the first Swiss leader to visit South Korea since the two countries established diplomatic ties in 1963. Going over to the National Assembly now, and lawmakers, the second and final day of a parliamentary interpellation session got underway this morning with lawmakers questioning government officials, but the session has since been suspended. For more, we go over to our parliamentary correspondent Shin Se-min, who's on the line for us at the National Assembly. So, Se-min, what caused this suspension?
Well, Mark, the session initially got underway a little over 2 hours ago, but it has been suspended for about half an hour now after ruling party lawmakers interrupted the questions from People's Party lawmaker Kim Dong-chul with Booth, which then heated the atmosphere as lawmakers started yelling at each other. Now, Kim was questioning the Prime Minister about the government's parachute appointments, where the government has appointed officials with connections but little experience to positions of power. Now, when the session gets going again, probably this afternoon, lawmakers are expected to focus on non-economic issues following Monday's first session on economic matters. Now, the lawmakers were also grilling government officials over a recent corruption scandal that has seen several lawmakers accused of nepotism and graft. The session is also likely to cover Korea's struggle to bring down ultra-fine dust levels, the oxyhumidifier disinfectant scandal, and the deployment of the U.S. missile defense system known as THAAD. That's all I got for now, but I'll bring you more details in our next newscast. Mark?
Thank you, Se-min. Our next newscast, of course, coming up at 3 p.m. Korea time today. Now, in international news, Saudi Arabia was hit with 3 separate suicide bombings on Monday. No group has claimed responsibility, but suspicion is likely to fall on Islamic State militants. With the ongoing acts of terror, NATO has pledged to provide assistance in anti-ISIS operations. Kim Mok-yeon has the details.
At least 4 security officers were killed and 5 wounded when a suicide bomber detonated his vest near the Prophet's Mosque in Medina, one of the holiest sites in Islam. The attacks came as Saudis prepare to break their fast on the penultimate day of the holy month of Ramadan. Ahead of the attack in Medina, 2 other cities were also struck by terrorists.
The security spokesman for the Interior Ministry said that security personnel were suspicious about the movements of a man. When the security staff took the initiative, he blew himself up with an explosive belt. This resulted in his death and the wounding of 2 security staff.
A suicide bomber detonated a device near the U.S. consulate in Jeddah after the first bomb attack hit the city of Qatif, home to many minority Shia Muslims. No one aside from the bombers died in those attacks. There was no immediate claim of responsibility, but it's thought the so-called Islamic State was behind the attacks as the targets closely coincided with the group's enemies. With the ongoing threats, NATO leaders have announced they will approve the use of the airborne warning and control system to help fight the Islamic State. Officials say AWACS planes will be able to fly to Turkish or international airspace and added that it could peer electronically into ISIS strongholds in Syria and Iraq. Kim Mok-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, more bad news for Pyongyang as more North Korean entities have been blacklisted by the US government for their involvement in proliferating weapons of mass destruction. Oh Se-young reports.
The United States has added 3 North Korean companies and 1 businessman to its list of sanctioned entities. The State Department on Monday disclosed a new list of firms and individuals from countries including North Korea, Russia, Iraq and Iran, naming 36 entities involved in the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. For North Korea, the targeted entities include the General Department of Military Cooperation, Taengpil Trading Corporation and Namung Trading Corporation, and an individual called Kang Moon-gil, believed to be the head of the latter company. Namon Corporation, based in China, has been involved in purchasing aluminium tubes and equipment for Pyongyang's uranium enrichment program, while Kang is known to have procured military supplies for nuclear weapons development. The 2-year sanctions take effect on Tuesday, freezing all assets within the United States, as well as prohibiting entry into the country and transactions with Americans. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Now, Britain's decision to bid farewell to the European Union is causing some instability around the world, and South Korea is no exception. The initial shock has subsided somewhat, but lingering uncertainties are having an impact on South Korea's foreign exchange holdings, prompting the Korean government to take stock of its options. Hwang Ho-jun has a story.
The instability continues. The Bank of Korea announced on Tuesday that Korea's foreign exchange holdings have fallen by $1 billion compared to the amount recorded in May. Reserves are now below $370 billion for the first time since the end of March. The central bank attributes the decrease to the fall in the value amount when converting foreign currency assets, including the British pound and other currencies, into US dollars. Ever since the UK voted in favor of Brexit, the value of British pound has plunged 8% and euro 0.2% from where it was in May. As experts expect the greenback to continue to gain ground, some are raising the idea of Korea renewing its currency swap agreement with the US, which ended in early 2010. A currency swap deal is when two countries agree to exchange two currencies at a certain exchange rate during financial emergencies. Once the initial agreement is set, cash flows can be exchanged in the appropriate currency for the contracted time.
Considering the exchange rate market can help stabilize the capital market, we plan to urge the government to expand currency swap deals with the US and China.
However, the Korean government is cautiously assessing its options, as currency swap deals are only a viable option when there's mutual agreement between the two countries on the need for them. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
The government has laid out an ambitious 5-year plan to boost Korea's service sector as it looks to breathe fresh life into the overall economy. The plans include increased investment, tax breaks and less red tape. Hwang Jie has the details.
With the manufacturing sector losing steam due to sluggish global demand and fierce Chinese competition, Korea is fixing its eyes on service. The government announced a set of measures Tuesday to boost the service industry over the next 5 years, with the aim of creating an environment that encourages capital flows into the sector. By 2020, the government will expand its financial support for the service industry by 15 trillion won, or roughly $13 billion. It also plans to strip away regulations and improve tax benefits to the level provided to the manufacturing sector, while doubling the R&D investment ratio in the industry. Out of its total, the government's service R&D investment ratio currently stands at around 3%, but the government aims to raise this to 6% by 2020. The support will be focused on 7 specific service industries. They are medical service, tourism, entertainment content, education, financial service, software development, and the logistics industry that is combined with new technologies. With such measures, the government hopes to add 250,000 more service jobs by 2020 and increase the country's annual growth rate by 0.1 to 0.2 percentage points every year until then. But it remains to be seen if the government will be able to push the measures through to their full extent as President Park Geun-hye's term ends in early 2018. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
Now, staying with economic news, as part of the government's drive to pursue cleaner energy sources, officials have drawn up a multi-billion-dollar investment plan for the renewable energy sector. Kim Min-ji has the details.
The Korean government will invest 42 trillion won, or over $36 billion into the renewable energy sector by 2020. This is part of efforts to promote the widespread use of eco-friendly energy sources in the country, as more than 70% of Korea's power comes from non-renewable sources. The plan calls for the construction of renewable energy power stations by 2020 that will be able to generate 13 million kilowatts of electricity every year, which is the equivalent of 26 coal plants. The government will also boost its scheduled renewable portfolio standard, which is a regulation that requires an increase in the production of energy from renewable sources. The RPS will be raised from the target of 4.5% to 5% by 2018 and from 6% to 7% by 2020. It will also get rid of the excessive red tape around renewables by allowing individuals to sell the electricity they produce using their own solar panels. Companies will also be allowed to upgrade to 1,000 kilowatt solar power generators from the initial 50, which is expected to cut utility costs. The plan also calls for businesses in the renewable energy sector to participate in an energy exchange market aimed at encouraging companies to step up their investments in the sector. Until now, only state-run corporations have been allowed to buy and distribute electricity in the country. Through the plan, the government expects to generate over $10 billion in domestic consumption and create some 30,000 new jobs by 2020. Renewable energy exports are also expected to more than double to $10 billion. 김민지, 아리랑 뉴스.
Well, that's all we have for now on this Tuesday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you, as always, for watching. We'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. So until then, goodbye.